DJ, take it away.
Welcome to the second ever episode of the Poke News Now podcast. This is PNN. I'm one of your hosts, DJ, and I am joined by my good friend, Josh. How's it going, Josh?
So good. I love PNN. Sounds so official. Like we are your official news source of all things Pokemon.
There we go. I do. I like it. It was actually your idea with the name, really. You came up with it, and we just instantly were like, yep, I think that's the one.
So. There we go. It's a gift that I've had for years from naming so many different bands along the way and different online projects that I'm like naming things is one of my favorite things to come up with, honestly. So glad to do it.
So speaking of music, just randomly, not to get too sidetracked, what kind of music do you like?
Oh boy. Well, a lot, actually. I'll tell you what I typically avoid is pretty much country, but even that I'm not like, I don't hate it all, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm pretty open to music. As a musician, I listen to it maybe different than some people. I like to listen to even how things are mixed, how compression is used on instruments, and like, you know, how are the different layers coming together. So I appreciate a lot of music. If I'm going to put music on as of recently, this is going to be funny. I've been listening to like Machine Gun Kelly radio. So bands like Point North, Machine Gun Kelly, of course, Trippie Redd, Black Bear, Avril Lavigne, maybe some Halsey's mixed in there. So yeah, it's just kind of a mix at the moment, but that can change. This morning I listened to what are they called? Suicide something or other. They're a metal band. I was listening to them this morning, and just real heavy stuff while I was at the Suicide Silence while I was at the gym today. So like it really just depends on what I'm in the mood for. Cool. How about you?
I listen to a little bit of everything. I actually listen to a little more country than you do probably. But I live in, kind of rural areas sometimes, and we have horses and stuff, so it kind of goes with the territory, right? But I also like old school rock and roll. I like all the modern music. I can't say all of it, but like I appreciate a good song when I hear it. You know, I don't dislike mainstream stuff. It's fine. One of my favorite things I'm listening to recently is Owl City. So okay. The Owl City project by Adam Young. He became one of my favorites recently. I just love his music. He sings it happily or upbeat or with a sad tone or whatever. Like he mixes sadness and happiness together in his music. And I probably butchered the way he said it. He says it really well. But I don't know. I appreciate it. And I like the, electronic music he does. It's cool.
I like that. The next song I have coming out, I've been told sounds like a mixture of Owl City and The Greatest Showman. And it is a cover of Blink-182's Damn It. So there you go.
Dude, I love that movie and I love that band. So that'll be cool. Can't wait to hear it.
Yeah, I think we're actually going to do some videos showcasing just the vocals without any music, just because that's where the Owl City influence comes in for sure. So yeah, it's gonna be fun.
Cool, fellow Owl City fan. I've known you for years and I didn't even know that. So yeah. Sweet. All right. So let's get into Pokemon, though. Today, we're going to be talking about Pokemon competitive battling. And before we get into that, we're going to have a couple short segments, like a news segment, a little trivia tidbit, a Pokemon of the episode, and then we're going to wrap up with showing some footage of the World Championship Series 2022 VGC, which stands for Video Game Console Pokemon World Championship thing. So we're going to show some battling of that while we talk about it. But let's first jump straight into the news. Josh, you want to take it from here?
Yeah, the biggest piece of news this week is I actually finished Pokemon Arceus last night. And for anybody that has known me for any amount of time, I don't finish a lot of games. So it only took me 10 months to get through it. But if, in my defense, I no-lifed Pearl when it came out, Shiny Pearl when it came out, to the point that like people were shocked at how fast I played through it. And then when Arceus came out, I was like, I'm kind of feeling a little bit of Pokemon burnout. And so that but since we started this show again and started like just with the news of I was like, I can't. I'm back into it. And so shout out to my boy Antoine for all the evolutions and helping me put together a great team for finishing up that game. But as far as the actual Pokemon news, Scarlet and Violet coming November 18th. Get ready. Pokemon giveaways, Genesect and Volcanion. I don't know if I'm saying these names right. That's going to be an ongoing joke for this show, just so you guys know. If you're in Australia and New Zealand, you've got October 21st through November 18th to pick those up. Marshadow will be distributed at the following retailers: U.S. Target, April 30th through November 12th. Canada, GameStop, October 30th through November 12th. And Australia and New Zealand will be JB Hi-Fi, October 21st through November 18th. So you can get all of the Pokemon in Australia and New Zealand just by heading to the one location. Now, if you missed out the first section or the first set, here's what I recommend. Go to GameStop and just be like, hey, yo, you guys got any of those left over? And usually they have a pile of them. So there's still a good chance you could get them if you go and check it out. So trading card game, Pokemon TCG, November 11th, Sword and Shield, Silver Tempest will be released. And the final Pokemon Sword and Shield online battle event took place this past weekend, 6v6 singles, no rules. Let's jump into our trivia / history segment here. And DJ, why don't you take that?
Sure, that sounds good. So, all right, last week we talked about breeding and like EVs and IVs to kind of introduce that. This week we're going to take a totally different path here. We're going to talk about the origins of Pokemon. It's a real trivia here. Where did it come from? Who made it up? And why? And this was an interesting story to me because growing up, when Pokemon first came out, there was all kinds of disinformation swirling about the origins of Pokemon. And it was this, crazy old Japanese, inspired thing throughout all history. And like, some like religious organizations were like hating on it and feared it because it came from Japan, and all that's just hogwash, So we're going to give you the real facts of the origins of Pokemon, what inspired it, and how it kind of came about. And we're going to do it in about 30 seconds. So, Pokemon was invented by a Japanese man named, I'm going to get his name wrong, Satoshi Tajiri or Tajiri. Do you know how his name's pronounced?
I'm going to go with that.
Okay.
I think Tajiri looks correct to me.
All right. And then his friend Ken Sugimori, I think who's an illustrator. So back in 1982, Satoshi started a gaming magazine called Game Freak. After a while, though, they started deciding to make video games instead of writing about them, which is cool. In 1989, they turned Game Freak into a gaming company, and then they produced games such as Pulseman, Yoshi, and Mario and Wario. Leading into the 90s, they were inspired by their childhood of exploring forests together and finding bugs and tadpoles. And this is really important here. So he came up with the idea for pocket monsters. And there's some really cool interviews and stuff you can read on the internet that talk about this and how he loved to collect bugs. He'd kind of imagine having like a team of bugs, basically. And so that's kind of where pocket monsters turned into Pokemon. They changed the name when they pitched it to Nintendo. And an extra little tidbit, I guess, I kind of said this, but he loved bugs so much that he earned a nickname, Dr. Bug, from his friends. And funny enough, one of the first places that they visit in the Pokemon anime, as well as the Gen 1 games, Red, Blue, Green, and Yellow, is Viridian Forest, where players catch bug-type Pokemon. Whew.
So I actually just checked this, but it looks like we got the Japanese name for pocket monsters, right? And in Japan, Pokemon is called pocket monsters.
I think so.
That's from what I'm looking at right here. Like Pokemon is short for pocket monsters, the original Japanese name. The franchise has its roots in gaming magazine in the early 80s. There we go. So kind of interesting that we get the Japanese name, they get the English name. But it makes some, I mean, could you imagine calling them pocket monsters here? It wouldn't. And for them to just call them Pokemon, they're probably like, that's not as fun. Like it probably just wouldn't be the same.
That's crazy, So, and then of course they rename every single Pokemon as well, and all the TCG packs. If you look at like what the TCG booster packs are called in the sets, they have really cool names in Japanese that are like Lightning, Thunder, Death, and over here they're called like Silver Flame, something or whatever. Like it's never as cool as their names.
Interesting. Okay. That's kind of cool. This just a real quick side note. When my son was very young, he walked in the house one day and he had both of his hands cupping something. And we were like, "What do you have in your hands?" And he proceeded to open his hands and then say, "Slugs." And he just had two slugs in each of his hands as he walked in the
Gross.
house. And it was like, as you were talking about him being out in the forest collecting bugs and stuff, I'm just like, oh my gosh, that is that was my kids. At one point they had one of those little, like, you get those little like bug catcher, and they're
Hmm.
clear and you can completely stuff full of snails, like completely packed to
Only
like
snails.
just snails. I'm just like, oh my gosh. So it's just funny, like, taking that childhood wonder of kind of, going out and collecting bugs and adventuring and stuff, and then turning it into, the biggest media franchise the world has ever seen. Like,
Hmm.
there's something very special about that. I think it's pretty awesome.
I think so too. It is cool. I think it's a cool story. So hopefully I get it justice in telling it. I mean, it just really is. It's neat. So I love seeing that people create something, right? First off, he created his own company, right, with his friends. Which what's better than that? And then he
Right.
did something. He took something from his childhood and made it into something that's just
It's
worldwide
magic.
popular. Hmm.
Magic. Well, our Pokemon of the episode, because we're going to get to it this time,
Yes.
is Gyarados, which is one of your favorites. So I kind of want you to cover this one because it is your favorite Pokemon. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll start with why it's my favorite. A really, really quick story. In Generation One, I was like 7 or 8 years old, and I saw Gyarados. I had to battle against one in the game. Hard to remember where. And I was like, man, I want that Pokemon. He's so cool. Of course, saw him in the anime. How do I get this? Never found him. Not once. Played months, 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 years past. Could never find this Pokemon. You can't find him in the game, in the Gen 1 games. You have to evolve him from Magikarp. And I'm like, I don't want this derpy fish. I didn't realize what he evolved into. We didn't have the internet. So, not at least to the access to it like we do today, right? So that tidbit of nostalgia when I finally learned out one day where he came from always stuck with me. And I think that's why I've always liked him. So there you have it. Gyarados is a dual type water flying Pokemon. Lots of people, I think, forget that he's a flying type, which is really important because he actually gets access to some cool flying moves. And the water flying typing actually makes him super killed by electric, which is not so fun.
In Arceus, I was watching him fly around, and I'm like, isn't this guy supposed to be in the water? So, like,
Mm-hmm.
I thought maybe he had a weird spell cast on him or something. I didn't know what was going on. I'm like, is he stuck in a tornado? What's the deal here? So good to know it's a dual type. That's cool.
He's definitely like I don't want to get it wrong, but he's like definitely inspired by like the flying dragon types that you see in what's that Disney movie that came out with the water dragon that also flies? What's it called? Just recently.
Uh,
It was on Disney Plus during the pandemic that came out. It's Raya and the Last Dragon, I think.
oh, got it. Okay. Yeah.
I,
I mean, there's
he's
been a
he's
lot
definitely
I've missed. So,
yeah, so he's kind of inspired with that kind of look, that kind of dragon look, which is like a flying water type sort of dragon. So he definitely looks very Japanese to me. So I probably could have put that in here. But either way, one of his Pokedex entries reads brutally vicious and enormously destructive, known for totally destroying cities in ancient times. And one thing about these Pokedex entries, which is funny, is that you'll see them sometimes in games and they'll say, like, he has the power of the sun or produces the heat of 20 volcanoes. And you realize that just doesn't make sense. Like, he would kill everything in sight if that was the case. And that's because Pokedex entries are written by 10-year-olds. And so you play a 10-year-old, you're filling out the Pokedex, and that's kind of the gist of every Pokemon game. It's one of your missions. And so you have to realize that as a 10-year-old, you would outrageously say things or compare things that you really didn't understand. And that's why lots of Pokedex entries that we'll try to find some of the cool ones are just nuts like that. So
that's pretty cool. That's very, it's a great little attention to detail there. I really, that's really cool.
yeah, Pokemon has so many cool little things in it when you really dig in. So speaking of digging in, though, we're going to be talking about competitive battling. So when we do these Pokemon in the episodes, when we talk about him, we're going to tell you how he's used competitively. And Gyarados is actually a really good one. He sees a lot of play. He's viable in every single format. He's never a bad Pokemon to use. So Smogon is a player, if you don't know this, Smogon is a player-made ranking system that ranks Pokemon on their use. OU for overused, UU for underused, and so on. You can see this list being used on Pokemon Showdown, which is a battle simulator, which you'll hear us talk about as well. And so with that, Smogon ranks him as a UU tier, underused. So he's not OU, he's not the best, he's not S tier, right? He's a little under that, like A tier maybe. His abilities are Moxie, which whenever he knocks out a Pokemon, his attack is raised by 1. And then the reverse of that, you could also have Intimidate on Gyarados, which is more common, which lowers the enemy's attack by 1 stage. His most used moves are Waterfall. He has Stab, so it hits for 1.5 times. Dragon Dance gives him 2 times attack, or 1.5 times attack. I'm trying to remember. And it also increases his speed. I think it's 1.5 attack and 1.5 speed. Yeah, speed and attack. Crunch is a Dark type move that's mostly used when he Mega Evolves, which he doesn't in every game, but he gains a Dark typing, so it becomes Water Dark when he Mega Evolves, so Crunch would then have Stab. Ice Fang is just a good coverage move. It hits a lot of things like ground types and other things that it's just used for coverage, right? If your Waterfall and your Crunch or your Bounce is the other one, flying type move, doesn't hit super effectively, then Ice Fang probably does. So those are the most common moves. Bounce isn't really used unless you're using it with like a Flynanium Z from the game that had Z crystals, or in Sword and Shield you can Gigantamax and it'll turn Bounce into a different air move, which will speed you up. So it does a lot of damage and increases your speed. So it's actually a really good move. But you wouldn't normally use Bounce outside of those. So you use it because it turns into something else when you use a Z Crystal or Gigantamax. So, phew.
Very, very cool. There's going to be so much for me to learn during this, especially during this next segment here. And we're going to get into competitive battling. We're going to put some B-roll on here. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Spotify, you can watch the video there as well. So
you're pulling up the World Championships, the VGC. So the official Pokemon World Championships 2022 VGC. We're going to talk about all the formats in a second here, so you'll understand what that means. So let's just get into it, though. So, you starting us out, or am I?
You better just take this one because I'm gonna be I've done a little bit with the EVs and IVs and starting to put a team together, and I've played just a little bit with some help of one of the community members, but this is definitely, I'm out of my league here.
So what type of format do you think you battled in? Whether you played online or against friends growing up, or was it like play with 6 Pokemon, just battle one at a time, or did you guys play doubles, or what do you kind of recall?
So I actually did a series of videos on competitive Pokemon with this community member. Their name escapes me right now, and I feel bad because I'd love to be able to shout them out. And it'll come to me while we're talking for sure. But we're just going over the basics, going over just the basic, how to battle, how to train. But we did it was 6v6, and I remember having to have the Pokemon that would allow you to, or using the items that would allow you to go first, and things like that. But again, it's it was on the early stages of when Sword and Shield came out, and then so we're talking, it's been a few years now for me, so a lot of it I need to brush up on, a lot of it, in order to hopefully remember some of it.
Yeah, so I mean, most people think about using 6 Pokemon because the games train you to use 6 Pokemon in your team instead of about 1 at a time. And so, hey, is this video? You want to skip the video up to where like showing the combat footage too? I don't know where it starts at. See if we can find some combat footage.
No problem.
Let's see here. We get some excitement on the field so we can see what, this is cool because this is what battling looks like nowadays. It's actually really exciting and colorful. And what we're watching here is a doubles battle, which is the official VGC format supported by Pokemon companies. So you can kind of travel and do regional events and local events, and then eventually the World Championships. You can get an invite to that, and you play on stage. And you get to bring 6 Pokemon. You choose 4 of them, and then you get to send out 2 at a time. And so this way of battling is a lot more complex than having 6 and sending 1 at a time. This is more exciting to watch because they could switch either their Pokemon at any time. They can choose which Pokemon they're targeting. There's so much going on the screen that it's just a little more exciting from the perspective of someone watching it. So this is that first format we'll talk about. It's VGC. I don't think it's played as much in like fan clubs and Pokemon communities online where you join in tournaments. They'll let you know if you're playing this style, but officially this is the one that Pokemon chooses to promote the most and support. The second one that Pokemon pushes a lot is called Battle Spot Singles, or BSS for short. And we talked about this last weekend. They had that tournament that you could play in. Normally, their tournaments are BSS. This one was not, but normally they are. And that's where you bring 6 Pokemon, you choose 3 of them, and you send them out one at a time. They're very fast-paced battles. They're over in a matter of 5 minutes usually. It's just wham, bam, done. And you see who won. And it's kind of looking at your opponent's 6 Pokemon, picking the 3 on your team that you think are going to beat theirs, knowing that you're only both bringing 3. Very fast-paced, usually very aggressive. There's not a lot of stall going on. It's very fast-paced. And then Smogon Singles is going back to like what you would imagine Pokemon is, right? You bring 6, you play with all 6, you send out one at a time. This is probably what people did growing up playing Pokemon before there was a lot of these official formats. And if you play on Pokemon Showdown Simulator, this is the most popular version as well. And I prefer to play on Cartridge. So like I like playing it because it's more visually appealing, like we're watching on screen.
Okay.
But the Pokemon Showdown Simulator is very widely used and allows you to create Pokemon teams and test them out, try them out, play them on a ranked ladder against other people, and get good at battling, first off, because you can do battling really fast because the animations and the fancy graphics are not there. So it's like a very fast-paced way to grind out games and get decent at playing, as well as you can make your Pokemon instantly without having to breed. You can just drag which EVs and IVs you want. It's super easy to put them together. We might screen share that or do a segment on that one time. But this format, the singles, and bring 6, play 6, is pretty widely played among Pokemon communities and Discord servers. They'll do a draft mode where you can draft a team with other players, or they'll do like submit your team ahead of time and then go through weeks of battling. I've played in a lot of those style tournaments, and that's fun. I think I like all the formats. I'm not like set to just one, depending on the mood you're in or that kind of thing.
I see. Understood. Yeah, and my question is the when it's not on cartridge, is that still like official Pokemon, or
No.
is that okay? All right.
No. So in order to play official, you have to play on the latest games. So this here we're watching Sword and Shield, and then when the next one comes out, this will no longer be supported in a pro scene, and even all the player run events are going to be on the latest game. The community driven ones are always in the latest game. There are some that will do showdown tournaments because they'll host them every single week, and they'll do the entire tournament with 20 people in one night in one sitting. And to do that, Pokemon Showdown is very efficient. It doesn't look nearly as good as this. We'll pull it up and show it sometime. It really looks pretty crappy, but
got it.
It's a way to just test stuff out and play with it. So, but yeah, the Pokemon battling on the screen is slower. It's prettier. It's more intense. We're watching them Gigantamax it. Like that was one of the coolest things. You don't get that experience when playing on a simulator.
Yeah, are you gonna miss the Gigantamax versus the new one?
I think so. Yeah, I missed Mega Evolution. Did you ever get a chance to play with the Mega Evolution?
I did not.
That was cool too. So the held item for the Pokemon had to be a Mega Stone, and then you could use your bracelet and Mega Evolve him. And he got like a 4th evolution. So Charizard evolved into Mega Charizard X or Mega Charizard Y. He switched typings and got stat boosts and stuff. It was really cool. Mega Venusaur, Mega Gyarados. Like there was just lots of cool old Pokemon got a new evolution. And then they did Z crystals after that, which was you give it a crystal and it powers up one move one time. So your lightning move could be a super lightning move now, basically one shot anything, or fire move could be a one shot fire move or stuff like that. And then they did this Gigantamax, which I love with the crowds surrounding you and the super size like Godzilla, and the stomping and explosions and the way the music changed. This was fun. How much did you get to experience this here?
Quite a bit, actually. I did quite a few raids and was able to stream and play with viewers and do raids, and obviously not much of the battling outside of just what was in the game, but I'm kind of like, I've always kind of been a fan of kaiju and everything. So like seeing what looks like Godzilla on the screen, I'm like,
Mhm.
I'm here for it, right? And then
Yeah.
and then there was also that kind of cool element, like where it was like when you were the little Pokemon looking at the big one, it kind of had that like Power Rangers vibe to it, which was popular at the same time as Pokemon, right? So
Yep.
yeah, there was just something about it. It felt strangely nostalgic and a lot of fun.
I liked what they did with this one. I thought it was a cool mix up, traveling around, in UK inspired area and going to big soccer stadiums or football stadiums, as they call it, and look at all the crowds cheering. It's just good touch.
In 2019 at E3, the booth was set up just like this stadium.
Hmm.
So when you walked in to find out about Sword and Shield, you walked into a stadium that looked just like this, and all of the people helping out in the booth had Pokemon inspired gear, like looked like soccer players, but with Pokemon logos all over them, and it really had this vibe, and it was really cool to be there.
Now we know now because they actually let a couple people this last week here go out and play 1 hour of the game at Nintendo headquarters, and they let them play the new game, not this one, the new one coming out. So some of these other podcasters and content creators you'll see actually got to go out and do this and sign an NDA, and maybe next time around you and I will get invited to do that. So, but in order for that to happen and us to talk about it, you guys have to share us with a friend and tell people about our podcast. All right, we need some support and love here so we can give you guys behind the scenes, never before seen stuff. Um, but yeah, we do know one last thing I'll talk about this quick is this is all going away. We're going back to a traditional gym setting. There are no crowds that watch you battle anymore. There's some people we know from the people who've played it for an hour and told us um, this isn't going to be the same. It's going to be a lot less exciting. Although the music does change pace and ramp up when you do certain stuff. I don't know if it's when you use the new gimmick that allows you to add a typing to your Pokemon, Terrestrialize or whatever. I think we talked about it on a different episode.
Yeah.
But so there's some music change and it does still feel kind of epic, but not to the same scale they're saying as this. So I think to answer the question the long way around, I will miss this. Yes.
I can already tell I will too. Like I understand that they don't really stick with the same from my understanding, but Gigantamax seemed like one that like let it run a few let it run a few more times. You know what I mean? Like let's
I
let's
know.
keep it around, because turning my Pikachu into a chandelier just does not seem all that appealing. Like
No.
uh,
No.
but who knows? Maybe it'll be maybe I don't want to dog it before I try it. But Gigantamax it was a pretty cool gimmick. Like it was very well done.
I agree. All right. So with that, let's tie up this episode. Can you tell people where they can find us?
Yeah, absolutely, guys. We are Poke News Now everywhere, on all the places. I think Twitter. I think I had to throw some numbers on. I think we're Poke News Now 1, the number 1 at the end, because somebody else had the at. But other than that, we are Poke News Now on TikTok. And what's kind of cool is we're going to be documenting the journey of growing this and evolving this Pokemon site from nothing to a fully evolved Pokemon news site. And we want to take you guys on the journey. So make sure you're following along on YouTube or TikTok or Instagram. And you'll be able to see we'll be doing a lot of short form videos, kind of just talking about what's going on week in and week out. Also, just covering what's happening within Pokemon in bite-sized pieces, and as well as to continue putting out episodes like this weekly. So thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button if you're on YouTube, and we'll see you in the next one.